Have you ever had that voice in your head that tells you that there are things that you're just not good enough for? There's things that you can't do. There are things that you maybe did something and then the voice comes and tells you how you did everything wrong, how you should have done it much better. Maybe even how can you even think that you could do this thing? I mean, you are definitely not the kind of person to do this thing. This is for somebody else, someone who's better, more skilled, prettier, whatever it is. If you have this type of self talk, then this is the video for you. And the funny thing is, there are people who have this level of self talk, and I'll tell them, we can get rid of that. And then they're gonna say, no, I'm good. Because they feel like they need to keep that voice for one reason could be, I'm not good enough to not have that voice. That voice needs to stay there because it's telling me the truth, right? That might be one. Another thing is, I need that voice there because if it's not there, then I don't have anything that pushes me forward. Now, for the first one, listen, we're gonna talk about so many things today. I'm gonna try and keep it short and keep it condensed because nobody should have this voice in their head. Okay, nobody should have this voice in their head. Let's do a comparison. We have the one voice that's like, you're not good enough, you can't do this, you have to become different, you would have to be a different person for this to work. You're too XYZ negative words. Compared to the voice that says, you know what, you tried out this thing and it was definitely not the best you could have done. You did all right and you can do even better. So let's look at where did we drop the ball on this? Where can we pick it up? And where can we come back and do even better next time? Let's look at the possibility and the opportunities for growth. And then let's figure out how do we start closing that gap so that you continue to grow and expand into being more and more and more incredible. Which one of those would you rather have cheering you on? The one that's like, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? You really think you can do this? You can't do that. Just go home and lie on the couch, watch some Netflix, and then go back to your mediocre job tomorrow. Who do you think you are? You think you can do this thing? Or you can definitely do this thing, but there might be a few gaps that we need to close first. Let's look at what are the things that we can start doing to develop the skills and to develop the capabilities for you to do the thing. How can we get you started on doing the thing? Because there's definitely also there are the people who are out there and they think they can do everything today. And it becomes really painful when you think you have that in you, and then you go out there and you realize you don't have it in you, right? I thought I could get up on stage and just talk, and apparently I can't do that. I got really nervous. And you've never done it before. Why would you think you can just do that, right? Some people like that. And they have their own challenges to deal with, because then they're going to go home and think, am I delusional? Have I had this image in my head of who I am and I'm not that person? You have the capability to be the person. Maybe you should practice speaking before going on stage. Maybe next time you're going to practice first. You're going to create an outline for what you want to say. You're going to create an idea around what is the shift that you want people to have in the crowd. And then you're going to practice. And then you're going to practice in front of a friend. And then you're going to practice in front of a group of friends. And then you're going to study some YouTube videos around what makes a good public speaker. And then you're going to implement that. And then and one day you're going to be on stage and you're going to do really, really, really amazing. That's the kind of voice we want in our heads, not the what do you think you're doing on a stage? What would you be doing on a stage? Why? Why would anyone want to listen to what you have to say? Right? That voice is not really useful. And I know there are some people who are able to take this really critical voice and turn it into something really good. It happens. One thing I can tell you is that they're not going to be very joyful in the journey of doing that. They're going to be miserable doing that. I have a friend who once said, you don't need to love yourself to create a business. You can build a 7-figure business while hating yourself. I'm proof of that. I totally did that. I was like, okay, that's good for you, but wouldn't you have preferred to build a 7-figure business while loving yourself? Wouldn't that have been more fun? Wouldn't that have been greater? Wouldn't that have been more sustainable in the long run? Because how long can you keep running on self-hatred to fuel yourself in your journey instead of having that supportive voice in your head that's like, okay, let's look at this thing from a more objective perspective and see where did we fall short for next time, because there's always the opportunity for growth and expansion. Now, if you haven't yet watched the identity shifting masterclass that I did, I would really suggest that you go and do that at some point very soon, because that's going to help you understand a little bit more clearly what we're going to get into now. Because what I talk about in the masterclass is the whole process around identity shifting. One being, you have to identify your current identity and your desired identity in order for you to be able to see how can you close the gap. How do you close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be? And in order to do that, you need to identify both. You need to identify this is where I am now, and you need to identify this is where I want to be. What does that look like? So if you know already, this is the voice that I have in my head now. It's very critical, it's mean, it sounds just like my Auntie Felicia. And then you have the other voice in your head that's like, this is the voice that I want to have, the supportive one, the one that I can listen to, and it outlines all of the things that we can do better. And the voice talks in a way that I don't feel hurt or criticized. I just feel happy and I feel motivated and I can see, yes, this is the way forward. That's the voice that I want to have. What does that sound like? What does the voice sound like? What kind of content does this voice give you? You need to identify both. And once we identify both, what we want to do with the first one is we want to identify where did it come from. So that's the second step of my framework, is source it back to where does this voice come from. Because guess what? We are not born with a voice in our heads that is super critical of us. We're not even born with a voice in our heads because we don't have language when we're born, right? So where does this voice come from? And this is about looking back at, okay, these are the things that I usually tell myself. Who would have told myself that? Not myself. Who would have told me that growing up? That's one thing. That's one thing it can come from. It doesn't always come from there, but it can come from there. The second one, which we often neglect, is how did the people that raised me talk to themselves? How did they, when they did something great and beautiful, how did they evaluate it afterwards? Did they say, oh, it wasn't really very good? Oh, I could definitely have done better. Oh, but all of these things were wrong. All of that went wrong. Because if that's how we hear somebody else talk to themselves, we internalize that as our self-talk. Whereas what is much more interesting to look at is, how does the voice of someone who loves you talk to you when you do something? Someone who deeply loves you, you've completed a task or you've completed a project and you're not fully satisfied with it. And you want to kind of beat yourself up over it. I should have done this better and this didn't work out and that didn't work out. Someone who loves you will say what? Will they say, yeah, you're right, that was so bad. You should never do that again. Wow, I can't believe you dropped the ball on all of these things. Or would that voice say, you know what, you actually did really great. These are all the things that went really well. And these are the things that could have been even better. Now let's figure out how can we do that better next time, right? That's the voice you want to have in your head, the one that's loving and supportive and also real with you. Yes, it could absolutely have been better, because usually things can be much better. And the more we grow and expand, the more we get into the tiny details of the things that could have been even better. Oh, we want to do this better next time. Oh, we want to improve on this next time. What is that voice in your head, and how much are you clinging onto the voice in your head that you have right now? The voice that's critical of you. You source it back to, where did this come from? And once you start seeing the patterns, these are the things that my third grade teacher told me. They told me I would never be good at math. This is what my uncle always said. This is what my auntie always said. This is what this person, and they were always so critical of me. Why were they so critical of me? I was just a kid. I didn't deserve that. I deserved motivation and uplifting. And then you can start thinking about, okay, this voice has actually been planted. I see how it has been planted. I saw other people that I loved and admired, and they were super critical of themselves. So I learned how to be really critical of myself. Or I kept comparing myself to people that were way ahead of me. Right? When I was like 12 years old, I was comparing my physical body to the Victoria's Secret models. That doesn't even make any sense. But nobody sat me down and said, "You're not supposed to have a Victoria's Secret's body. You're 12 years old. You barely even hit puberty, if at all. Things will, you're going to grow into a woman's body someday, but it's not now. You should love the body that you have for what it is." Nobody sat down and told me that. Probably because they didn't expect that I was comparing my body to those of the Victoria's Secret models. But if you're always comparing your 12-year-old body with the Victoria's Secret model body, then you will always feel like you're coming short. So, what are the scenarios growing up and being the person that you are today? Where are the scenarios that you compared yourself to an unrealistic standard for where you were? And we do this a lot also. We start a new business and now we're comparing ourselves to someone who has been in business for 20 years. Is that a realistic standard? Not that you can't learn from somebody who's been in business for 20 years, but are you comparing your journey to someone who's been there for 20 years? That's not a realistic standard. How can you change the voice from, "Oh, this person who's been in business for 20 years had such a good year and my year was like nothing happened this year. Why is nobody buying from me?" Because you haven't had 20 years to put down to build an audience and to create a customer base and to have these things lined out and put systems and processes in place and making sure that there's a voice out there. There are people referring you. There's people talking about you. You have testimonials. You have whatever it is. You can't compare those two journeys. So look at, where have you been comparing yourself to an unrealistic standard? Where did that unrealistic standard come from? And how did that get planted into your head? And how often have you been critical of yourself, comparing yourself to a standard that has nothing to do with you and your journey? And then the more you start looking into, okay, this is how it happened, and this is how it happened, and this is where the voice comes from, and this is how it's been built up over the last couple of decades, and this is why I'm talking to myself like that. And once you start understanding that, then you can say, okay, this voice actually has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want to have this voice in my head. It doesn't belong there, it belongs somewhere else. It should have never been placed there in the first case, but I understand where it comes from. I understand that, so I'm going to have grace with myself and be okay with, okay, this is where it came from, and now I'm making the decision to change it. And that's when we reach to step number 3 in the framework, which is the reframing. You identify, you source, and then you reframe. The reframe is that other voice, the one that you want to have. You get really clear on, what does that voice sound like? How does that voice talk to you? And very often I would say, if I am giving my best feedback to somebody else, to somebody that I love, to someone that I'm proud of, and to someone that I want to see them in their light, not necessarily in my light. I don't want to project my own stuff onto them. I want to see them fully in their light, and I want to give them honest feedback based on what I believe is their potential and how they could do even better. And I'm going to deliver that feedback in a way that is loving and supportive, and in a way where I hope that they'll be able to see all the love and support. The dogs agree. And then I'm going to communicate that in a way where it's like, I'm so proud of you and for what you've done. And here are ways that you can do even better if you want that feedback. Some people don't want the feedback, and that's totally fine. Do you want some feedback? Would you like some feedback? If so, this here is how I see could be even better. And I totally believe that you can do that because you have all of the capacity to do that. And I totally believe that you'll be able to make these changes because you definitely have that in you. And you can keep growing and expanding and becoming the most incredible, beautiful person that is the most accomplished, that's so much aligned with your full potential. And you're going to create a whole life journey where you just keep expanding and learning and reaching and doing things that are incredible. I'm going to be right here in your corner with you. That's the kind of friend that I want to be to other people, to the people that I love and to the people that I'm proud of. So guess what? That's the voice I want in my head. For me, I want that voice for me. So I've learned to have a lot of grace with myself. I have learned to compare myself not to somebody else, but to my own journey. I'm comparing myself to see, where am I moving forward? Because not always do you move forward in exactly the area that you desire to. Sometimes it's like, I want things to move faster here and here and here and here and here. I want, a fitter body. I want more money. I want more clients. I want better relationships. I want all of this. But what you're actually exploring and what you're actually experiencing in terms of your growth is your internal growth, which means that you're doing the work to build the foundation to get all of the things that you want. And things aren't happening fast enough. It's not happening fast enough. I want it faster. And then you say, you know what? I totally understand why you want things to move faster, but can we just look at all of the growth that you've had so far in all of these areas and how amazing that is? Can we just look at how incredible you feel compared to what you did just a year ago? Can we just look at how much internal power that you've built and grown and stepped into? Can we just look at what a strong support system you've become for other people? Can we just look at how much healthier and happier your thoughts and your feelings are? And you start looking, okay, all of this is, I've not been stagnant. I haven't jumped in the areas where I wanted to jump, but I'm building the foundation to create that. How do you put that voice in your head? That's the voice we should all have in our head. So the next time you're finding yourself with a voice in your head that is just so if it makes you feel bad about yourself, I navigate so much of my life based on how do I feel in this moment and where does that feeling come from? And if it's not excited and joyful and grateful and loving and caring and just elevated, then it may be neutral. It might be a bit neutral. I'm okay with neutral. I can definitely deal with neutral. But is it bad? Am I feeling bad? Where does that come from? And very often it comes from something that has happened in my head. Very often that starts with something in my head. So I'll look at, okay, what is going on here? What kind of stories am I telling myself? What kind of scenarios am I playing out? What's happening here? Am I going back to the thought patterns of a previous version of myself and that just doesn't feel aligned with who I am? And is that what I'm feeling this? But in the old times, it would be like the voice that just keeps telling me, oh, wow. Have you looked at how big your thighs are? Right. Have you seen those big thighs? How are you ever going to wear pants? How is anyone ever going to love you when you have those big thighs? That would be the conversation I had in my head. How are you ever going to build the life that you think you want in corporate if you can't even figure this Excel thing out? You can't even learn these basic things in Excel that people who've done Excel for 20 years know on the back of the back of the bone of their back. What is that? What is that expression? Back of their head? Sorry. The people who just know how to do these things because they've done it for 20 years. And you took a course in school, right? You took a course in your university and you don't know how to do this. You still don't understand this thing, but someone explained it to you twice. How do you still not understand? How do you expect to become a big boss CEO when you can't even do that? That is just embarrassing. How do you expect anyone to like you if you don't have, better looking clothes? You don't even know how to style yourself. You look ridiculous. You think you can make friends looking like this? And now I'm saying it out loud, it sounds completely ridiculous. But my voice in my head was completely ridiculous. My voice in my head was so dumb. And I did a lot of work to kind of dismantle it. So I did a lot of the work that I'm explaining to you today to figure out, where does this voice come from? And for me, there was a lot of talk from the 90s magazines that took women's bodies. They took celebrities in bikinis, and then they zoomed in on their thighs. And then they put a big round circle around their cellulite. And they were like, wow, this person that is supposedly hot has let themselves go. Wow. Do you really... How does this person leave the house? How dare you put on a bikini and go in public onto a public beach? How dare you? Right? That was the story that I grew up with. And eventually I saw, oh, this story is in my head. I couldn't leave the house because of my chunky thighs, right? I couldn't leave I felt so embarrassed. I felt horrible. Every time I tried on clothes, I hated the way that I looked. I would be wearing big baggy pants and wear sweaters that I would tie around my waist, and I would go somewhere, and then I would see my reflection in a store mirror, not even a store mirror, store window, as I was passing, and I was like, why is my butt so big? Remember, this is back in the early 2000s. Butts were supposed to be really flat, at least in Europe, right? You wanted a flat butt, tiny, and then you're supposed to have really big boobs. So you're supposed to have like barely any body fat on your body. It's better if you have bones sticking out, right? And this is not built that way. So I was comparing myself to what was the standard at the time, and what I was seeing was really not that. And the voice that came into my head was the voice of the magazines that I was reading, right? That kept telling everybody, "Ah, the audacity of these women to leave the house when they look like that. Are you serious?" So I found the voice and I started removing that voice. One thing that I did actually on that was that let me look around and let me look at people that I find beautiful. Not the magazine people, not the social media people. Human beings that I know and that I find beautiful. And now let me try to compare them with this Victoria's Secret's model. And anyone, right? I've never met a Victoria's Secret's model in real life in my life, so I don't know what they actually look like. But anyone will fall short to the standards that are set for that. And then if you're just like a human being walking around in the street, doesn't mean that you're not beautiful, right? It just means that you're not a Victoria's Secret model. Too short. Your thighs are too chunky. Your shoulders are too broad or too slim or too whatever it is. So I started noticing that there is a lot more variety to beauty than what my inner critic was telling myself. And I started just looking at, wow, there's so much beauty in this world. And then I started accepting my own beauty. I was like, wow, there's actually a lot of things about you that's really cute. Just stop looking at your thighs. And eventually I started looking at my thighs and I was like, you know what? My thighs are beautiful the way that they are. They're absolutely gorgeous the way that they are. They're very much their own. They will never make it to Victoria's Secret, but I love my thighs regardless. So I started doing a lot of monitoring of the critical voice in my head, what it was telling me, where did that come from, and how could I then reframe it? How can I reframe that negative thought in my head? And I started putting this up. My mom tried really hard, right? My mom tried to make me see myself in the way that she saw me. And I was like, Mom, you don't know anything. Who do you think you are? Right? Then my critical voice got projected onto her. So whatever critical voice you have in your head, notice when it comes. Because sometimes we will be so critical of ourselves without even noticing that that is what we're doing. So notice that thought. What is it telling you? What does it feel like when it's telling you that? Where did that thing come from? Why are you comparing yourself to something that is just completely unrealistic? Why are you talking to yourself in a way that you wouldn't talk to someone that you love? Because a lot of people, if you started writing down the conversations that you're having, that critical voice is talking to you. If you started writing that down, transcribing this critical voice, put it on paper, and then you read it, and then imagine that you're reading it to somebody that you love, you would feel so freaking horrible. Most people, right? You would feel absolutely horrible. So why are you talking to yourself like that? Why do you have the audacity to talk to your beautiful, incredible self like that? Like that? Really? And the thing is also with a lot of people that I work with, it's not even a harsh voice. It's not even a voice that's like very noticeably critical. It is a subtle thing that's like, I don't think necessarily you're gonna. Do you really think you can do that thing? I'm not sure you can do that thing. I don't, because you don't have evidence that you can do that thing. So why would you go do that thing? How about we just stay here where it's safe? I don't think, you're making up these big dreams and thoughts in your head, and I think I'm not sure. I don't think that's for you. Right? That's also a critical voice because it's telling you this things that you can't do. You haven't even tried yet. Would you rather have the voice in your head that goes, let's just stay where we are? And then next year we can look at doing something that's a little bit more crazy. But for now, let's just stay here. I don't think it's safe to go out there. I don't think we're there. I don't think it doesn't make sense for us. I think maybe there's, no, this is not good. Or do you want to have the voice that goes like, we can learn. We can learn. We can figure it out. But you know what? You got to take the first step. You got to get somewhere before you can get to the big step. You got to take the first step. If you want to get over all the way to the other side of the mountain, you got to start with the first step. Let's go. Let's go. Let's take that first step. What are you doing? What are you waiting for? You can totally do this. Other people have done it. If other people have done it, why can't we? They didn't know how to do it in the beginning. What voice do you want in your head? Because honestly, the voice that we have in our head is going to be such a key thing when it comes to actually following through on our journeys. So even if you feel like I don't really have a critical voice in my head, I just have a very doubting voice in my head. That to me is also a voice that gotta go. You gotta get rid of that voice and replace it with something that is way more can do. How do we do? How are we gonna move forward? Who do we need to talk to? What skills do we need to build? How? Maybe you just need some more practice. How can you get more practice? Let's get you out and get some more practice with this thing. Let's get you connected with people who are already doing it. Let's listen to them. Let's listen to a podcast with someone who's already doing it and they tell their story. Let's start there. Let's do something. Instead of that little voice that's like, are you sure? I don't think we can actually go there. I think it's just, you know what, we've been doing great so far. And we might have felt a lot of doubt in ourselves because I'm here doubting you. But I think we can just stay here, right? It's better here. You're doing pretty good, you know. I'm not quite sure how you got to where you are now with all of the self-doubt that we've been carrying around. Apparently you're trying to overcompensate with your doing because you keep doubting yourself so much. And now people are, you know, rewarding you for just overdoing things a lot. And now we have to keep doing. And now we reach up to a new level and a new stage. And now we have a new promotion. And now we have to do even more and even more and even more because we just keep doubting ourselves. And burnout. What voice do you want in your head? So I'm gonna leave that for today. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, comments, if you agree, if you disagree, please let me know. Just type it, click enter, click subscribe, click some of the other things, and I'll check in with you again next week. Thank you. Bye.